Never waste a good crisis. And when it comes to the economic crisis, don't waste it when it can have a very positive impact.
You never want a serious crisis to go to waste.
The way we're going to win over the long term is not just militarily. We've got to win over hearts and minds. And what that means is we've got to invest in countries that have no educational infrastructure, have no means for young people to get ahead. We've got to give them a stake in creating the kind of world order that I think all of us would like to see.
Stay tuned for politics and religion. Well, this week is absolutely packed with world-affecting meetings that are being held in New York. Of course, all of it is centered around the 64th General Assembly of the United Nations. This is the opening week of debate. President Barack Obama spoke there yesterday. He made quite an impressive speech there. We're going to be taking a look at some of that today. However, before actually going to the United Nations, President Obama met first of all with Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel, and he also met with President Abbas of the Palestinian Authority. Then he met the two of them together in an effort to push them to resume Middle East peace negotiations, and it looked like maybe he got it done, but now then Abbas is saying we just cannot return to the negotiating table right now under these conditions. Well, as we continue on, President Obama made his very impressive speech at the United Nations. However, Muammar Gaddafi of Libya ripped the United Nations by saying that the UN Security Council was really not the UN Security Council, it was the UN Terrorist Council, because you had 5 members with veto power that could do what they wanted to in the world. They could pass sanctions against weaker nations that could not defend themselves and thus terrorize the smaller nations of the world. He also criticized severely the veto power wielded by 5 nations, and no other nations on earth have access to that veto power. So he made a very strong rebuke, and even though he was considered somewhat of a maverick, yet some of his points did strike home. Now, in the middle of all this, Mr. Gaddafi also commended President Obama, saying that he hoped that President Obama could remain the president of the United States forever. Now, in the midst of all this, there was a meeting held on climate change, and the advantage was to bring many of the leaders of the world together for this one meeting that could then create momentum going into the Copenhagen meeting, which is scheduled for December of this year. There were some, though, at the climate change meeting that did not agree with it whatsoever. Czech President Václav Klaus sharply criticized the UN meeting on climate change on Tuesday, at which U.S. President Barack Obama was among the top speakers, describing the meeting as propagandistic and undignified. It was sad and it was frustrating, Klaus said, and he went on to say that he is one of the world's most vocal skeptics on the topic of global warming. He stated it's a propagandistic exercise where 13-year-old girls from some faraway country perform a pre-rehearsed poem. He said, it's simply not dignified. Continuing on, Klaus said there were increasing doubts in the scientific community about whether humans are causing changes in the climate or whether the changes are simply natural occurring phenomena. But politicians, he said, seem to be moving closer to a consensus on climate change. The train can't be stopped, and I consider that a huge mistake. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon organized the climate summit at the UN General Assembly meeting to help create momentum before a UN meeting in Copenhagen in December to reach agreement on new targets for reducing so-called greenhouse gas emissions. We do have to realize that climate change is the horse that one worlders believe they will ride to the promised land of global governance. Even Mr. The former Vice President Al Gore even stated that laws concerning climate change will end up leading the world into global governance. Now, if you don't know what global governance means, the word governance means government. Global government means world government. And Mr. Al Gore is a believer in world government. Barack Obama is a believer in world government. George Bush is a believer in world government. George Bush Sr. is a believer in world government. And Mr. Bill Clinton is a believer in world government. That's the reason we're getting a world government right now, is because for many presidents now, those policies have been promoted. Now, some of them may believe in it more extensively than others. Some of them may believe in it as long as the United States has its hand on the lever of power. Nonetheless, they do believe in global government in one form or another. If they were right, then all of us should get behind it. However, the prophecies of the Bible tell us that the course they are taking, the highway they are traveling, is going to lead mankind to its worst ever disaster. It will be so terrible that only the second coming of Jesus Christ will save humanity from itself. That's where we're headed.
This has been an excerpt of Endtime Ministries' daily talk radio show, Politics and Religion. To view the show in its entirety, visit endtime.com, click the radio tab on the left-hand side, choose the show, and click Watch Video. If your show does not appear in the recent broadcast, click the More Broadcast tab at the bottom, and you can choose by date or show title. Be sure to catch our new television show, End of the Age, on Inspirational Network.